Well, here's the top story this morning. Economic growth in the country has flatlined as the total size of the economy shrinks.
Well, this comes as later today, the Bank of England will hold their final rate-setting meeting for the year.
After raising interest rates to combat inflation, the Chancellor suggested this is to blame for what he called subdued GDP, calling it inevitable.
So as the Rwanda debate finally begins to settle, now comes the next challenge for the government, getting the economy back on track.
Let's put that to former advisor of both the Bank of England and the Treasury, Roger Gewolb. Roger, good morning. Very good to see you. Roger, where are we at? Do you look at these figures? Where does it leave us?
Well, I think that the economy, good morning both, I think the economy is shrinking, perhaps not as fast as the credibility of this government. If you look at the Prime Minister's questions yesterday, after we're through here, you'll actually see Rishi Rich say the economy is growing, quote unquote. No reference to his Office for National Statistics announcing at the same time that the economy is shrinking. So one wonders what we can believe that these people say.
It was a small shrink. I mean, Eamon was saying yesterday, 0.3, it's negligible, really. Essentially, it's flatlining, but that in itself is a worry. But the Chancellor keen to say, look, we expected this. I'm comfortable with this, with a recession, even if it's shallow, because we have to get a grip of inflation.
Well, yes, I mean, flatlining is not growing, so that was wrong. And yes, it is inevitable. I've been predicting for a year that we would flatline because the 14 interest rate rises that we've had have really done nothing to curb our inflation. In America, they have their own energy supply, and they have a lot of consumer-driven inflation. People are not spending here except on essentials, and making money more expensive for them doesn't bring that down. The kind of inflation we have drops by itself. And I predicted also long ago that when it finally did start to drop, even though it's been delayed and prolonged by these rate rises, I mean, they've actually caused inflation, that Jeremy Hunt and Andrew Bailey and Rishi Sunak would all claim credit for it. So it is inevitable, yes.
So, OK, rate rises are causing inflation. What news, Roger, for the consumer as to what is ahead come the new year?
Well, I think the consumer is in a worse state than ever, and more than the consumer, British business is in a terrible state because these interest rate rises are going to drive many, many tens of thousands of companies bankrupt in the next 12 to 24 months, as predicted by quite a few think tanks, Eamon. So the next step has got to be, and I have launched our campaign for fair finance, has launched earlier this week, a campaign to get the Bank of England to start to slowly reduce interest rates. Even if they can claim credit for it, if inflation has fallen, why are we sitting here waiting for the rates to come down?
Well, the mortgage lenders are predicting that interest rates are going to come down rapidly next year, and they're getting some better deals finally, I was reading yesterday. But what about the impact of these tax cuts as they come in January and possibly more ahead of any election? I mean, the Front of the Eye today saying that they will keep interest rates high. So the Prime Minister has these warnings on the one hand, you know, that's going to affect interest rates, but on the other hand, he's got all this pressure from the right of the party to cut those taxes to make people feel a bit better ahead of the election.
Well, I'm sorry, but it's all a lot of gaslighting as far as I'm concerned, because interest rates should come down now, and it's nothing to do. The reason that mortgage rates are dropping is because the 14 rate rises have hit the property business, the rental business, and the mortgage business so hard that mortgage lenders have voluntarily dropped their rates to get the business going again. It's nothing to do with us. It's their business falling off because of all the damage been done. And Isabel, when you speak about tax cuts, everybody knows, and it was widely announced only a week or two ago, that the autumn statement actually had a net effect of increasing taxes to the highest level since 1948. It's all smoke and mirrors. Every time I hear Jeremy Hunt's talk and see his wide-eyed grin telling us how good things are, it creeps me out. I just think Bates Motel. I mean, it's not true. we haven't had tax cuts.
But do you think he believes what he's saying?
I think they all believe what they're saying. They're not unintelligent people, but they're kind of caught in a warp of their own making, like the Bailey-Osaurus and his thick-skinned friends at the Bank of England are caught, in the sense that they committed to slavishly following the United States, where the situation is, as I said, totally different than here. Again, they have their own energy supply, and they have $1.7 trillion saved up during the pandemic that people are spending with alacrity, which we don't have here. People are still spending on food and essentials. In 2009, we had a similar situation of cost push inflation, as it's called, and the Bank of England left rates untouched at 0.5% for almost 3 years. So Andrew Bailey, who I'm afraid has something of a, let me say, alleged reputation for making a number of really serious, costly mistakes and acting too late, seems to have done the same thing here, but he's committed to it. He can't turn around tomorrow and say, I was wrong. He'd lose face. But I would call to your attention the report a fortnight ago of the Economic Affairs Committee of the House of Lords, which is a marvelous example of British understatement. It's absolutely silken. But what it actually does is it's extremely critical of the Bank of England and says the independence of Bailey and his colleagues that Gordon Brown gave them in 1997 needs to be taken away, because their forecasting and their handling of inflation is unacceptable.
And just finally, Roger, Christmas. Have you any joy to spread our way with Christmas? Does Christmas offer any respite from what is going on?
I'm hoping that the Christmas gift that we all favor the most, British businesses, so they don't keep passing on higher costs to us, consumers with energy and food, will be that Mr. Bailey and his colleagues will have listened to all the noise that I and others have made since the very first rate rise, that this is wrong, 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 and he will actually reduce interest rates today by 0.25%. If that doesn't happen, I worry for this government, because, I mean, you know, every time I write about Rishi Sunak, Eamon, whether it's notes for a television program or an article for a newspaper, and I say his name, the predictive text writes sunk. So
It's
sunk.
Worrying.
Sunk, as in that ship has sunk.
Richie,
I tell you what, Bailey-Osaurus and Sunak has sunk. That was pretty entertaining, given that it was the dry topic of interest rates. Roger, you've been a delight. Thank you very much.
Roger, you're always a delight. We wish you compliments of the season.
Thank you. Whoever called them interest rates should be sued for false advertising.
Absolutely. Okay. I couldn't agree more. I think they're playing fast and loose with that. Appreciate your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.